Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Joel and Adam. And today we're going to be talking about The Sword, a 1980 film directed by Patrick Tam. It's a wuxia film that kind of helped spark the Hong Kong New Wave in the 80s, or at least it was one of a handful of movies that did. And it follows the travails of Li Mak Yin as he seeks to become the supreme swordsman. That's a very bare bones description. When we were looking up synopses of it, we found another one on IMDb that I want to mention, which is completely inaccurate, but I thought I'd point it out. The IMDb breakdown is a swordsman and a samurai work together to find a blade, which is completely incorrect. There is another movie called The Sword that was made recently, so I wonder if it has something to do with that one, but that is not the right plot at all. The movie also stars Norman Chu and Adam Chung, and I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a break, I would say, from the earlier Shaw Brothers movies. It feels. I mean, this is not a Shaw Brothers movie, but it feels like the kind of more in line with movies like Duel to the Death and stuff like that. So I already saw this movie and did a review on the blog, so maybe you guys should give your reactions to it because this is your first time seeing it.
Yeah, I loved this movie. This was fantastic. It's just beautifully directed. It's got great fight choreography. It's got a really great characters. It just pulled me in. You were talking. It is stylistically definitely kind of a break from the Shaw Brothers stuff. But there was a Shaw Brothers movie I had in my mind the entire time watching it, which was Death Duel. Just the whole guy who's at the top of the Jianghu that everybody wants to find and fight. It had that element of it. Just made me think of that. But it is actually an entirely different plot. It's just more a thematic similarity.
I could definitely see the connection to Death Duel.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, what'd you think, Joel?
Oh man, this movie kind of got its hooks in me.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what to make of it at first, right? Because it starts off in the cave, and I was like, okay, this seems like a reasonable setup to a movie. And then we don't go back to those characters in that intro for a long time. So I was like, what's happening here? And I don't know, there's some kind of sorcery that this movie weaves where it is I wouldn't say it's slow when it starts, but it's a little bit nebulous and it becomes more concrete as the film goes on, and it gets it accelerates as it does that. And I didn't realize that I was in a stream with a current until it was so fast that I was going over the rapids. So that was the experience of watching this movie for me, and it was really, really cool. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this film. That was the emotional. Yeah. It was the emotional journey.
It's deceptively simple. It's like that's the thing that struck me when I saw it. So I should say, just to get this out of the way, I love this movie. I thought it was great. And I was pretty much so the moment you hear that guzheng music that's sort of doing the theme, the theme becomes like a synth sort of thing with a little bit, I think it's got chorus or something in the background. But when they first introduce it, they're just playing like a traditional Chinese instrument and doing it very slowly. And I found that I responded very strongly to that, and the whole setup of the sword, and one of them is cursed apparently, and it's just this very ominous setup for whatever is about to unfold. And then
it feels a very horror movie kind of setup to it.
Well, you know what? I was going to mention this later, but maybe we should talk about it now. One of my comments in my notes was a lot of these movies, but this one in particular, they use a lot of horror movie techniques, even though it's a wuxia film. Yeah, it is. And you see it a lot, especially with the Norman Chu character when he's dealing with his wife. There are things that you would see almost in a slasher movie or something, with just the way it's shot and all of that. So,
yeah, well, the setup of the movie really, it has that, horror comic book style of characters told not to do this one thing at the beginning, and they do it and they doom themselves. So it isn't a horror movie, but it does have a lot of similarity in structure.
And I guess we should. Oh, go ahead, Joel.
Dude, that villain, holy smokes. He almost haunts the movie because he only does a couple of really awful things, but by the end of the movie, you're like, oh, I can't wait for you to die, you son of a. It's really good. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can just this is a late night discussion, by the way, so we are probably going to jump around. But since you bring him up, the thing that I really loved about that character, well, number one, it's Norman Chu, he's tends to play heroic characters a lot of the time, but he also can play a good villain. And here he's playing a guy who, when he's first introduced, you think, oh, he's kind of a gentleman. He's obviously in opposition to the protagonist, but you don't necessarily have a reason to think that he's as wicked as he becomes.
They really shocked me with that one. Yeah, because he seems smooth, in control, and like he's kind of got like he understands what's going on with the romantic rivalry, but he's like, hey, look, we can be gentlemanly and above board about all of this.
Yep.
And then he just takes out he just shows his true colors at the very end of that scene with his wife, and like, oh my lord.
Well, and it's interesting because that is a trope. There is the guy who is just they're very in control of their emotions, and they don't let like the rival in love get to them. And we should probably mention the whole setup is that this guy is the protagonist, the Lee Mak-yin character, goes to an inn and he sees his old love interest. And when he talks to her, he finds out that she's married to the Norman Chu character. I think it's Lin Wan is maybe the name of the guy. I can't quite remember. And the Lin Wan's bodyguard comes in because the guy goes into her bedroom at night and starts attacking him. But then once that's all resolved and they understand that it's a misunderstanding, the Norman Chu character is like, oh, well, I understand. Like, you guys are, childhood friends. Why don't you stay and have a cup of tea with us? Like, he's being very cordial and polite. And then he goes and speaks with her in private when the guy leaves. And at first he's very understanding and he seems like gentle and he's combing her hair. But then there's this shift. And there's like a musical shift and a camera shift, and then he like grabs her hair, and it's all done in slow motion, and we realize this guy is like an abusive husband, and also just a whole lot more than that. He's just a villainous, evil.
Oh yeah, this guy is like, what was the guy's name in American Psycho?
I can't remember, but I don't.
Bateman, that was him. Yeah, he's like the wuxia equivalent of Patrick Bateman, like to a T, and he's really well portrayed too, because he has that same facade that Bateman has, right, where he's like completely socially in control, but there's just something so vicious lurking beneath the surface, and it's portrayed gorgeously. Like, it all comes through so well, and like I actually felt kind of uneasy in that very first scene with him before he reveals his true colors, because it's still there. The actor's conveying that so powerfully. And like, I was just chalking it up to being like, okay, this guy probably is a pretty good swordsman in his own right. And yes, he is, but also he's a total freak. God, I really liked that actor. What was his name? I'm bad.
Norman Chu. Norman Chu. He often plays nice awesome guys, so it's kind of an interesting role when he plays a villain. And here, it's just perfect when it switches like that, because you're like, oh, he's that kind of guy. and
another way, again, this is a thing where like it shows you that really early in the movie, right? So you know that this guy's a bastard, and then it kind of just lets that fade into the background for like most of the movie, and this dude's operating in the shadows, pulling strings, sending his brute squad of one guy who's a ninja to go and do nefarious things. That guy's also an absolute SOB. Really,
the Eddie Ko character, the number 2 guy. Yeah.
Well, you kind of have 3 villains in order of magnitude. They are Norman Chu, his ninja assassin, and the bald guy with the saber. I don't think we even get a name for that dude. He's just like some kind of bandit.
Yeah, he's just kind of like a henchman of some kind. He's sort of a middling level henchman, I think.
We get
a lot of him
pretty readily. Well, he's dispatched to show like how nasty that one sword is.
Well, that's the guy that's chasing what's her name?
I had it on the screen.
What's the daughter's name? She called herself Little Rock at one point, but I can't remember.
Little Rock.
Hang on here. It's she's a Fa Ying Chi.
Yeah, that's her.
Oh yeah, okay. So but I love the way that she's introduced, where she basically forces the hero into bed at sword point so she can hide from the bald guy that Joel's talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
She's kind of like the brat in the movie, I would say. Is that
Yeah,
Big
she
time.
had kind of a Huang Rong kind of energy going, I think.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But
Yeah, and for a moment, she even almost, it wasn't her, but she reminded me of one of the actresses that played Huang Rong in the in the trilogy movie, the Cheng Che trilogy movie, the Brave Archer
Brave
series.
Archer movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it
Yeah,
might have
I
had to
can
do
see
with the
that.
hair or something, but
yeah, I like the early part of the movie there too, because the movie gets kind of increasingly grim and fatalistic as it goes on. And it's like there is just real kind of little playful part at the beginning of the movie with the two of them, which just gives you a good contrast. It gives them somewhere to go down to rather than it just being this kind of grim, serious movie all the way through. I think that really enhanced the movie.
Well, and it sort of disarms you too. This movie loves disarming you.
Yes.
Yeah, it loves to
That's
set
very
stuff
true.
up and be like, "Oh, this is what's going on here," and then like just pull the wool out from under your eyes. The scales fall. You get stabbed in the throat. This movie's really good at that.
Yeah.
well, the one of the scenes that I really like is when he goes, I think it's called Flower Hall, when he first he goes to the pigeon guy.
Yeah.
And again, I love the very simple introduction, but he's just like, I really want to find this guy so I can fight him and be the #1 swordsman. And the pigeon guy's like, well, he pays him a bucket load of money first off.
He does. By the way, I looked up the modern day equivalent cost of those gold ingots he was using. They're like $400 to $500 each. So he put in like the equivalent of like $10,000 on the table there.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Yeah. I was gonna say that for the Pigeon Man too. Just the second that scene came, I mean, I was already loving this movie. It was just that character was just so fantastic. I was just like, oh man, just when this movie, you already had me that this is so good.
He kind of ushers in the style of the whole movie because he sneezes and then there's like this big wind, this gust of wind from all of the pigeons that he has. And we see him from the front, and it's just like, it's a very striking, there's something just very unusual about the way that introduction is filmed. But I love when he sends him to Flower Hall, and the guy goes there, and there's this crazy guy there, and the guy thinks that he's the what's his name, Fa Chin Chu, the master that he's trying to have a duel with, and the guy's been waiting there for 12 years for him to show up so that he can have a duel with him. And that's just it just gives you this idea of the level of obsession going on in this martial world over being at the top of it and facing the top guy.
The way that scene's directed too is so weird. Like the extreme close-ups to make it seem really uncomfortable. It's like.
And then the action, that's the scene where you first get a taste of the action. And the action in this movie is so fast, it's so sharply edited. And again, it's a style that you'd be familiar with in like later 80s movies and 90s movies, but it's unusual to see it like 1980.
It's really early for their versions of a style like this.
Yeah. And it's so precise. And again, just so like everything feels so quick. Like all of the sword strokes are just kind of like, but they're clear. It's not like it's fast and it's difficult to follow. It's very easy to understand what's going on. So it just has this energy to it that's very striking. And again, I would say it really. And again, it's there were two action choreographers, and one of them was Ching Sui Tung, who's the guy who did Duel to the Death. And apparently,
that explains a lot.
Yeah, this was a movie that helped inspire. From what I heard, helped inspire that film. But you can also definitely see the style is similar there.
It's kind of uncanny how much deliberateness and conveyance they have to every single moment while doing like they preserve the flow and the tension, and it really draws you into the stakes of the scene. There's such a brutality underlying all of it, and like every fight in this film ends in a bloody catastrophe at the end, and there's a lot of wonderful like hideous maiming wounds that happen during this film. Like the stakes are always really clear. It makes you really tense watching these. They're great,
and they're all interesting. Like even the scene when when he's protecting her from the bald-headed guy, and she's under the bridge with her sword and he's on top of it. There's something about that composition of the fight scene that I just really like, and I don't even know why. I like that she's underneath prodding with the sword for some reason. It just adds this other dimension to it. But that scene also looks distinct because it's a little bit different from this scene. And that scene, his movements are a little bit more stylized, and he's fighting with the sword a little bit differently. He's got the sword pointed down, so it almost creates the impression that he's a little bit more relaxed because maybe the bald guy is not as good as the other guy that he was fighting. I don't know. That's sort of my own read on it.
It seems like the skill level is, because that bald guy is surprisingly skilled. He sticks around for a lot of the movie against a dude who is pretty much top of his game, super amazing swordsman, right? So like at first I was like, wait, is he playing with him, or is it that like there's like there's no skill gap? This guy's like surprisingly capable, and we never really get a clear answer to that, because by the time they finish their final fight, our protagonist has got a sword that's so much more powerful and deadly than he's used to, that it almost looks like he kills him by accident. Like even he seems surprised. He's like, oh no.
Yeah, and what was this sword called in your version? Because I watched I watched it on Prime when I first saw it, and then I watched it on the Blu-ray that I think Adam also has. But I also saw this morning I decided to watch it with the dubs to get a different, and every single one of them is different.
Yeah, it was like Go Fu or something like that. It had a weird name. I can't remember what it was precisely, but
I think in one of them it was called the Chi Mud sword.
Oh yeah, that's what it was, Chi Mud.
And the other sword was called the Cold Star sword, I think.
I watched the Blu-ray.
What was it called in yours?
I can't remember actually. I'm drawing a blank. I watched it last night.
Yeah, no, it was Chi Mud in the Prime version.
But for some reason I can't find what
the Prime version needs some help too. There's a couple of scenes where it does a close-up of a letter written in Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever it is they're speaking, and like there's no translation, so it's like, thanks, Prime. That really
and
helps.
on the Blu-ray that is translated, Joel, because that was something I noticed because I saw it first on Prime as well. So
well, it's so good. Unfortunately, there's a couple of real like stinkers in the translation. So when he goes to fight the master swordsman with the cursed sword and he stabs him, right? The translation that they have in that scene is from the master swordsman is, I admit defeat, and he walks away, right? But that's clearly not what happens. Clearly what he said was something along the lines of, you got me, but you should admit defeat.
Like, I don't know. I could have sworn he said, "I admit defeat." I could be wrong, Adam. Do you remember?
Oh, no,
talking about when he fought the
that's right. No, he gets stabbed and he admits defeat. But what he says is, "You admit defeat," or "You should admit defeat." So like they got the wrong translation. Because the thing that actually happens, where like he's the number one swordsman, but he's depressed about it, implies that he won the battle. But the thing that the translation says implies that he should have admitted defeat and he lost the battle.
No. So what happened is. What's his name? Fa Chin Shu says, I admit defeat. I think in one of the subs, he says something like, youth has athleticism to it, or has, gives you
in the Prime version, what he says specifically implies that he won the battle and is still the top ranking swordsman.
It's like,
the thing that I remember him saying in the Prime one was that you're youthful, and so that gives you an advantage. But
he says that afterwards. The first thing he says is, you should admit defeat, and then he says you're youthful and it gives you an advantage, and then he walks off.
The other one he admits that he is admitting defeat himself in the Blu-ray version.
Right, because he got wounded in their clash, and he doesn't want any more to do with it because he's a sickly old man and wants to live the rest of his life in peace. So he's like, "Oh, your problem now, your top spot," and he goes off to have his wound dressed, and then he gets killed by the assassin. Which, God, how nefarious was it that the dude stabbed him through that wound to cause absolute
That was a
chaos.
very clever thing. I think the other issue there too, just to revisit that point, is the reason the other guy gets upset about the battle is because he finds out that the old man was basically just placating him, and
he's depressed about it beforehand too, because like he doesn't learn about him being placated until after he's sitting there, drinking. Like, this kind of sucks. I thought that would be a better fight.
Yeah.
And the lady's like, he's been sick for like a decade, right? And he's like, what? And then that's what.
Yeah. So it's like a meaningless, and that's when he's kind of like, oh, it's all an illusion, if I remember.
Yeah, he gets
But
real impressed.
but yeah, the
Yeah,
way
well, the villain has his speech about that too. It's like, oh, I got the girl and I got the fortune and everything, and oh, he's got his fame.
yeah,
Enjoy your
the villain
fame.
has the best speeches.
God,
I love when he goes to his, so we're jumping around, but I love when he goes to his wife after all this has happened, and he's
Uh,
like, and he's talking about how like, you know, how horrible all the fallout is for the guy.
mhm.
Because like, you know, now a woman wants revenge, another woman killed herself, you know,
jeez,
and
yeah.
you know, and I think it's during the fame thing that you're talking about. I think that was that speech, but
Yeah.
it's but yeah, he's got some great lines. The what was it? The what about the curse sword itself? I know, Adam, you want to talk about the curse that they
Yeah,
mentioned at the beginning of the movie.
it is interesting because I like the fact that, it does seem to indeed be this cursed sword, but it's not like it makes anyone do anything or it causes these things to happen. It's like all the characters that are doomed in this basically make the choices that lead to their
Yeah,
doom. It's almost like it's almost like more of an omen than this
yeah.
force. It's like the sword is there because this is going to happen. It's just the kind of, I don't know, it's just the way I was thinking about the
No,
movie and the forces of fate in it.
I think it's very difficult. And also, he mentions the will of heaven at one point. And there's also the scene with the bird when they're dueling. There's this great
Mm,
shot where I think it's a
Yeah.
hmm.
crow that just kind of goes from one side of the screen over the guy who's going to die. And
Yeah,
it's very ominous. And it's even more ominous when he doesn't die in the fight, you know, because then it's like,
yeah,
wait.
it's
So,
hanging there.
uh, but yeah, I thought that the curse, I don't know if it's meant to legitimately be a real curse or if it's like you're saying, it's just,
Yeah.
you know, the but I did like how the guy who's forging the other sword sees it and it's like, oh, this thing was forged in hate. And
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
don't mess with
that
this
it's a
thing.
Uh-huh.
really interesting sort of uh, explanation for why it's kind of got strange strange energy to it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't, Joel, what did you think? Did you think it was a properly cursed sword or just more of a
Man,
symbol of the
yeah, it's used in an interesting way because when we're first introduced to this movie and that sword, the master swordsman who gets just shown this thing is like, yeah, throw this away. He doesn't say give it away. He doesn't.
yeah,
He's like, get rid of this. This thing might be the sword that kills you,
yeah.
right? And so the guy takes the advice, kind of. He gives it
He
away to a
doesn't.
mutual
He
He
friend.
keeps it and
doesn't.
doesn't
He
use
said,
it. That's
yeah.
his pro. If he chucked it
That's
aside at the beginning of that movie, I don't think he would have died. I think
Well,
that was
the
the
thing is, him giving it to his, like, I don't know, lover or whatever she is. It's like that's totally a way of going, I want this sword somewhere I can come get it later
yeah.
if I change my mind.
Right.
That's
So
like
it's
Fair
yeah,
enough,
that
but he does distance himself a little bit from it at least,
a
right? He
little bit.
doesn't like he's not using it at the end of the movie. He's like it's kind of retired just like him, but much like him, like it's not really escape, it's destiny. Winds up in the hands of the man that saves his daughter,
yeah.
and the guy keeps it during the duel, which decides the top spot. But it doesn't kill him; it just wounds him. But that
Hmm.
wound is used by the assassin to make it seem like the sword killed him, which still ruins everybody's life. So
And it's
did
because
it? I
that guy
mean,
wants both of those swords too. So that's
mhm.
the other element of it is
Right,
that
and
he
that guy's avarice for the sword does not end well for him. I mean, the last shot of the thing is the now number one top ranked swordsman whose life has been hollowed out by his pursuit of this thing, just throwing it in the ocean. Like he's just like, nah, that's enough of this. Finally, actually taking the good advice and getting rid
wait,
of the
did he
fool
throw it in the
guy.
ocean at the end? I'm trying to remember.
He
How
totally
Yeah.
does. Yeah, he's
did he?
on
Okay.
the
It
rocks and he's
freeze
like,
I remember
frames,
him
freeze
walking on the
frames on the
rocks.
sword falling.
Okay.
yep,
The
yeah, it's
end
the
comes
very
up.
last thing. So yeah, is it cursed? Not in a straightforward fashion. It
Hmm.
like the main villain of this enemy of this film, and also kind of just like fate itself is it's a slippery, elusive thing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't. I would say that it is cursed enough to effectively ruin everybody's lives. I'm going to call that cursed. Like, Master
It
Swordsman who can
is.
forge a magic sword says it's cursed. Everyone who sees it is like, this is a weapon of ill omen. it destroys everyone's lives and it winds up getting thrown into the ocean. Yeah, that's cursed enough for me. That's cursed enough.
I'm not saying it's not cursed. I'm just trying to, in a lot of movies, like if you had a curse, like Stormbringer, for example, could just make you kill somebody that you care about. It's like, it's not that kind of cursed. It's not.
It's very subtle, whatever it is. It's very subtle. And it's very ambiguous.
That's kind of more my point. Well, and I think it's more interesting because ultimately all the characters do doom themselves. So
something I would say in favor of what Joel said is I had a note to myself, the Marshall world of dramatic coincidences. But I think another way to read that is that this was all fated coincidences. That have to do with, because all of these pieces come together to doom so many people. And I think
I was thinking very much about your part in Ogre Gate about fated coincidences watching this movie. Actually, I'm like, there's a lot of coincidences, but it just works. It makes sense.
Yeah. It feels very appropriate at restart. And even the Fashin Chinshu character comments when he says it's the will of heaven. Because the woman's saying, I didn't, I'm sorry I gave him the sword. I didn't mean to. I didn't know it was going to bring you harm. And he said, oh no, it's heaven's will. Like that's the
what are you gonna do? He seems a man that kind of like, he doesn't want his fate, but he seems a little resigned to it. I
like in these movies when the characters, when they can sense their own fate and they sort of accept it, and there's like a degree of, okay, well, this is how it's going to go, so let's just it's just sort of like, what is it, buy the ticket, take the ride? Is that the the
pretty much
Gethsemane moment.
Well, there's so much, like, I love his performance, too, because he really does have to drag himself through the last leg of his fate. He's like, oh, great, the cursed sword's back. Oh, my daughter's been kidnapped, and the cursed sword was used to save her, of course. Well, I guess we got to have a duel now. Okay, I'll go to the duel. He's just like, I knew this was coming.
Well, it's interesting because it's one of these martial worlds where, like, the guy has just been in retirement, so he doesn't have to fight anybody because he doesn't want to keep. It's one of these movies where when you're at the top, everybody wants to dethrone you and take that place, and so it's just this endless cycle of bloodshed. And also, it's a movie where there's really not, like, even the hero is not all that heroic in this movie.
No,
like he just wants to be the top swordsman. He's not. He saves a girl, but just so he can get to the father and have a duel with him. I mean. Maybe he would have saved her because they have a pre-existing connection.
Yeah, and he does help. He does help her out at some point. So it's not like he's totally unheroic, but he's willing to put his heroism aside to further his goals. That's kind of he's a hero secondarily.
Yeah, he's certainly no villain. He's not the Norman Chu character, but he's not as admirable as some of the other heroes that we've seen. And so, I don't know. I like this sort of grim and dirty martial world. And again, I like how simply it starts, where it's just like, oh, he's just walking into Flower Hall Villa or wherever this place is. And it just, it feels like it almost feels like a movie isn't taking place when it first starts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it, actually. It doesn't feel like a movie is taking place.
Yeah, it feels like, oh, he's just wandering around and it's almost borderline hangout movie. And then it becomes this, like Joel was saying, just this like really complex web of emotions and doom and drama. And it's like a chamber piece because it really is just about, like, there are locations in this movie, but those are so secondary to all of the struggles that the characters are internally going through as they deal with one another.
Yeah, it's a very character-focused movie. A lot of wuxia movies will give you those bigger shots where you're seeing more of the location. You got your tea houses and what have you, and the location has its own, like, vibrancy.
Yeah,
that totally eclipsed in this movie, both in terms of dramatic weight, both in terms of, like, how the story treats it, both in terms of, like, the camera and what it focuses on. All of that, it's all character, and you barely see what's surrounding them.
There's a lot of close-ups in this movie. Very heavy close-ups.
And I really like close-up shots. A lot of the early Choi Yuen movies used to use these really, nice close-up shots. And then towards I could be wrong. I don't want to generalize and be wrong, but I feel like my memory is towards the mid-70s, he starts panning out more for some reason. Maybe to get more of an epic look or something.
That's the look I associate with 70s wuxia, is that panned out look. And I think you're right.
Yeah, but if you go back to like the 70, 71 period in Choi, and I'm just talking about Choi Yuen, I'm not talking about everybody, but you
So what
probably see
movie?
it in like
Can
King
you
Hu
have some
too.
titles from that period? Just
Like Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, you see a lot of close-ups, and Duel for Gold, you see a lot of, and they're it's very kind of spaghetti Western almost in some
Tools
ways,
for
and and I like
I
that.
remember
I
Duel for
like that
Gold.
use of close, and I feel like we're getting that here too, but it's done in a slightly different way. It's not quite like that. You know the like what's the Dollar trilogy? What's the
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, for a few dollars more and all that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not quite like that. Like, oh, I can see every pore
that
of the
movie
guy's
almost.
face.
Yeah, that movie makes it feel grimy because of how close those close-ups
Yeah,
are. But
it,
it's not that. But it feels much like that Dollar trilogy. The movie feels more modern because almost all cinema looks like that now,
yeah,
right? It's a lot more close-ups nowadays. It's just
yeah.
like because they want to exhibit the actors or whatever. But that's just how modern movies look, and they owe that to that era of filmmaking. There's very few Kubrick-y long shot movies anymore. Usually they win
yeah,
awards, but
yeah. I mean, I've seen. I was actually watching a YouTube video. Someone kind of complaining about how over reliant. Like
uh-huh.
they're not
Close-ups.
close ups for an intent. Like in this movie, every close up has a purpose. You know, whether it's when he first meets that swordman at a flower hall and to make you uncomfortable, or
Yeah.
but yeah, it just feels like everything is just
Well,
shot
here
back
it's
and
like
forth.
you're getting close-ups because you want to get the emotion in a person's eyes or something like
Yeah,
that. Like that's it's
yeah,
all very deliberate. Like when he first meet, and it's not a close-up, but it's still at least closer than a wide shot or something. But when he first opens the door to the chamber of his former lover,
Yeah.
the night that he finds out she's married, and that look that flashes on her eyes is very. It explains a lot, and so you
yeah,
need a closer up view of her in order to understand that. And so I
yeah.
think, that's a movie, it operates at a character level a lot. And so even down to the pigeon guy, we get a close up of him too early on. And a lot of the close ups of him is more like his weariness or his concern about this swordsman with a black sword who's demanding answers and, all the, by the way, that scene where spoilers, where the pigeon guy gets it, I thought was one of the best kills in the movie.
Well,
Um,
again, it's wonderful because it disarms you. The movie's wonderful about that, right? It looks like the business is concluded and there's this tension hanging in the air because you know who this dude is. He's this
yeah.
unbelievable assassin. And you're like, he's just going to walk away and leave a loose end? Man, it's weird this scene's still going on, huh? Oh, God, when's it happening? And then boom, and he is just absolutely annihilated.
And the way he spins it. Also, this movie, they use wire work. They use a lot of like very flashy type of moves, but it's not like 90s wuxia where it's like so untethered, right? Which I like.
Yeah.
But this is like
Yeah.
a lot more. It uses those technique, but in a more subdued way, I would say.
Well, it only uses them on a few occasions to really sell like the
Yeah,
nearly supernatural level of skill we're dealing with here.
yeah.
Of course, in the end of the movie, the final kill shot is the
That's
one that was like alarmingly. It was so shockingly sudden and intense
yeah.
that I was like, "Did that just happen? Did I just have
And the
an
thing
acid
is,
flashback?"
if guys had been exploding left and right, it wouldn't have landed the same. So I think
No,
it
no,
was
they
wise for them to kind of hold back a little bit for because that scene I had
restraint
this
until
and
again
it's
they
so
know this.
gratifying because he doesn't even move his hand. He just holds his sword up and the
Yeah,
guy
he's
just gets
clearly against the
sliced. He
ropes.
gets bisected from head to crotch down.
Well,
It's
first of all, yes to all that. Second of all, I wasn't like the scene comes out of nowhere. Like
yeah,
all of a sudden, the last thing they have this strike, and he's flying back wire fu like wuxia like Zhao Dong finger
yeah,
superpowers flying back, and then rockets forward, and you're like. What's happening? Dude's like on his last legs, pulls up the sword like in an act of desperation, and then splits the guy like a banana.
yeah.
Um, and it's oh god, it shows you enough that you're like oh god, but it's so quick that you're like wait. So
What
I
did
actually
that
had to
happen?
yeah no I had to rewind it and watch it a couple times. Like
Yeah.
there's no way that just happened in this movie.
Yeah,
Um,
it's almost like this movie doesn't do that. I mean, you saw a couple of heads get cut off, but and you saw a guy get smashed into his pigeon cages.
Yeah,
But
and
it felt,
those are the only times, right? It's a rare spice, and so the guy's face afterwards, where he's like as shocked as we are, just utterly dazed at the
yeah.
spectacle of this dude's demise, and he just kind of staggers away, like I'll deal with that later.
That's what's perplexing about the scene. It's almost like he didn't expect that to happen when
It's
it
clear
occurs,
he didn't
right? Like
expect that to happen, right?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what he was expecting, but
He's shell shocked at the end of that, and I feel you,
Yeah.
bro. Nobody
Yeah.
expected that
well
shit.
because on top of so that happens, and then he finds out that his lover, what's her name? Is it Yin Su Yu? Was that her name? Or am I
Yeah. The recently widowed Yin Soo Yu is also has also met her demise.
Yeah, she's met her demise at the hands of the Norman Chu, which we should have seen coming the whole movie. But
That was gonna happen.
and
Yeah.
also
It's
it's kind of the fault of the of the other girl. What's her name? Fa what? What's her name there? I
Oh,
can't
Little
find
Rock,
her.
yeah.
Fa Yin Chi, is that her name?
Just calling her Little Rock.
Yeah, that Little Rock.
yeah,
They have a fun
Yeah.
little bit of banter about it.
yeah.
But
I
it's
might be
interesting because he's
forgetting, but-
responsible for the death of her dad, and she's responsible for the death of his former lover.
Call that a wash.
Yeah, I mean, they're not fully responsible, but they each had like a hand in assisting the course that took place. But yeah, I don't know. Is there what have we not covered anything that we wanted to talk about in this one? The music. I thought the music was really
music
good.
Really good.
Music
agree.
was good. They also do this interesting thing where they kind of have leitmotifs for the character. Like the synth stuff is about our modern swordsman, and that traditional stuff you were talking about is for our older swordsman. So that was.
But it's
kinda
all
cool.
the same melody, which is interesting.
is.
Like
Yeah.
it's really just one song. What I like about it is how much juice they extract from that one really good. Like it's basically a chord progression and a couple of notes, and but it works.
It's a great spine for the whole thing, though.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about it, and it's recognizable, and you can play with it a lot, and they'll blend with this wonderful like fluid, playful way between the classical instruments and then all the modern synth stuff. So I really feel like the soundtrack is an important element of this movie, even though much like most of the film, it's subtle. You don't realize it's manipulating you.
Because it is repetitive in a sense while being different, and changing, but being kind of the same theme. Because the movie is it has a lot of weight to it. It's like basically the movie is adding to your reaction to that theme over the course of the movie, I think. So it's just a good interaction between the movie itself and the soundtrack.
What was interesting too is I found out looking at the DVD extras or the Blu-ray extras, the director he got a start in television. I guess that's where a lot of them got their start. But and maybe that poisoned my interpretation this time around, that information. But I couldn't help but think that music does the way that they keep using it did remind me a little bit of how television sometimes uses a theme, because they often will just have one theme that they have to just keep using. They don't have like a movie budget or whatever. But it's like a very artful use of just, we got this like this one melody, so we're going to use it over everything.
But I find like it's the German style, right? Like that's the dramatic German way to use music.
And that's the other thing. He was influenced by German. He mentioned German filmmakers. I think.
Yeah, no, he straight up gave these guys leitmotifs. So yeah, no, it's I think I see what you mean there, and I think that to some extent you're going to draw on your familiarity and experience, but I mean,
I guess what I mean is it feels like somebody's just hitting play on a button during, like, that's the part, but in a good way, not in a bad way, but because it's kind of like you're like, yes, the music is coming back, something important is happening. But the other thing about the sound engineering with that is they would play that music, but they'd also have like a wind or some kind of lofty sound around the music when the camera would like pan up, and it would create this real sense of drama that I think added so much to the movie. Like when he's going to face the Fa Chin Shu character, when he brings the daughter back, and the music starts, and then they kind of show that like upward angle of the residence, and you get like the music and the wind, and then you get the shot of him gripping his sword, and it's like, oh, something is going, like, this is like very very tense filled moment here. I don't know I know maybe something bad is going to happen.
That's another thing this film does a lot. It'll build tension, and you'll feel it palpably, but it won't explain it at first. So it's just this kind of floating tenseness, and then it kind of crystallizes through the scene. It gives the movie an amazing grip, because it's constantly getting your attention and then rewarding that attention with a dramatic clarity. So that's a cool strategy. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It's really nifty to watch.
Yeah, I really like the mood. One of my big notes was that this is so filled with mood, this movie.
Yeah, it is a moody movie, dude.
And that really helps when you get to like the love story elements, especially. I thought one of the more interesting ones, and again, I hope this is the right character, but the Jojo Chan character, I think, the Yin Soo Yu character, when we start to realize how in love she is with Fa Chin Chu, and that she's like not just like his friend or whatever, but they have you ever really know what the history is. But again, spoilers, she ends up killing herself when she finds out, like when everything unfolds and he ends up getting killed and she feels remorseful about it, she ends up committing suicide in front of his memory tablet, in front of his like funeral tablet. And
it wasn't translated in my version, so I was like, what is this thing?
Yeah, in the Blu-ray version, it says what that that's
in memory of the guy that died that she's clearly in love with. Yeah, that would have clarified things a lot, because I was like, why this spot? There's got to be a reason. And then they focus on it, and I'm like, yep, don't speak Mandarin. That's
yeah. I mean,
not clarifying.
I that was one though where I felt like you almost didn't need the because I saw it on Prime first too, and I kind of got that right away, because I feel like she's committing suicide in front of this. It's got to be his grave, right? Or not his grave, but his like
right. I was inferring something like that, but I was just like, it was just muddy enough that I was like, ooh, I really wish I could read that.
No, it's certainly being able to read that and being able to read the letter helped a lot in terms of just having clarity over the things.
It clearly didn't hurt my enjoyment of the film, not at all.
But I found that story with her kind of moving. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like she had like this whole history, but they didn't really talk about it directly. So it was kind of like there was maybe a little bit of like repression going on with it too, where you just weren't sure how much consummation there was in that relationship even. And so it just was an interesting thing. And then the other thing I want to say is I listened to the dubbed version today, and the dubbed version is kind of a wreck. It's so the dubs are in a lot of ways they work really well. Like it'll say things a little bit differently sometimes in the subs, but it's still the same basic essential meaning, even if it's a little bit different. But there were some scenes where it felt like a character was saying something that the viewer knew, but the character didn't in the dub version, and it got kind of weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, and also one of the actors was a little bit off in the dubbed version. But the good thing about the dub version is I was able to pay more attention to the action, so there was that. But yeah, I don't know. Another note I had, I don't know if this will prompt any thoughts, was elegant. There's just something very elegant about the movie.
It is elegant. I think that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
And crashing out, Adam.
Yeah, I can see Adam is starting to. So we'll probably want to wrap this up.
I've had a very long day.
Yeah, it's only 8:00 here, so I'm getting off light because of the time.
It's after midnight here, so that's
as I've told you guys, I drove through New York and all the way back, New York City and all the way back today, and it's
how long? I mean, I don't want to derail too much, but how out of curiosity, how long of a drive is that to New York?
It was a 6-hour drive round trip.
That's really? Training, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, but
which isn't unbearable, but it's with heavy traffic. It's.
I always imagine like New Jersey being like 20 minutes away from New York for some reason.
Well,
So.
this is me driving through New York.
You went through. Okay.
If I want to be in Times Square, I can catch a bus and be there in an hour.
Okay. So I'm not too. I was like, oh man, The Sopranos totally misled me on the geography of New Jersey and New York. But yeah. So I don't know. Anything else to add about this one? I mean, I would say it's definitely worth picking up. The Blu-ray is absolutely worth picking up. I read the essay in the book. I had some quibbles about the essay, but I'm not necessarily qualified
to read that.
But like one thing that like in the essay, and again, I might be reading too much into it, but the writer mentioned something about how obviously this is not a happy ending in the movie, and it kind of contrasts that with Shaw Brothers movies, saying it's not the happy ending that we often get in the Shaw Brothers. But I feel like the Shaw Brothers movies had a lot of very sad endings. Like way back to like
Wuxia tragedy is like the biggest. It's huge. Like it almost doesn't feel right when everybody gets a happy ending in a Wuxia film. Like you sort of want this ending where there's one guy whose life has been destroyed on a sea cliff and he just throws the sword off. Like
honestly,
yeah.
Well, part of the appeal actually for me is that you have no idea with a Wuxia movie. It's like, is this going? When you're watching a typical Hollywood action movie, you're going to get a good ending. It's like with Wuxia movies. The first time you watch it, you're totally up in the air. Could go either way till the end.
They could end with the character heroically dying, with everybody dying. It could end with a happy ending. You never, half the cast could get killed. You just never know what the ending is going to be, and it really does make it exciting. I remember, like, again, I mentioned Golden Swallow. The first time I saw that, I was just amazed. I was just that a movie could end that way.
I think that the idea that we're constantly getting Hollywood-style happy endings from Shaw Brothers is kind of laughable.
And I might have misunderstood what the essay was trying to say. Like maybe they weren't being as universal in their statement as that. But I remember reading that thinking that doesn't seem quite accurate to me.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of good features on the Blu-ray, I think, and again, it is on Prime, but it's very wonky. Something that I should point out is that there's another movie called The Sword that I think came out fairly recently, and what I did was I bought The Sword on Prime, but then when I went back to find it, it wasn't there. But I found a link to a movie that had a different cover, but had the description of this movie. So.
Oh, geez.
I've heard it's apparently very tricky to know if you're watching this movie or a more recent movie. So if you go to like Tubi or something and see The Sword, I think they have the wrong version playing up there. So just be mindful. What you want to do is you want to go onto YouTube, look up trailer of The Sword 1980 so you know what to expect, and that'll give you a better idea when you actually do sit down to see it if you're seeing the right thing. But it was very frustrating. I think there was like a shuffle.
That incorrect movie is very CGI heavy, so I think you'll instantly know you're not watching a 1980 movie if you look at the wrong one.
And the report I got from the person who ended up seeing it by mistake in my Wuxia Media group on Facebook was that it's not good.
I actually watched 5 minutes of it, and that was all I could take.
That was all you could take? Okay.
I had a morbid curiosity, and I was like, nah, I'm out.
Not good? Okay. Well, there you go.
It could, maybe it gets better, but I did not reach that.
Maybe you have to take it in totality or something. But any final thoughts, or are we good to go here?
I'm good to go.
Yeah, I think that pretty much exhausted my ability to say interesting things about the film. I could be like, oh, I liked this. Oh, I also liked that. Oh, I liked this. But that's the rest of my commentary is
Okay.
So there you go. If this was going to go on for another hour, that would have been everything I had to say.
And I will just say once again, this is a late night discussion. So if we got any of the actors' names wrong or anything, we apologize. I hope we got everything right. But yeah, so we will let everybody go. And until next time, we will talk to you later.